Hello everybody. I'm here via video because I couldn't be in person, which is a strange thing to say when we're talking about Zoom. But anyway, today I'd like you to make believe that we're in the class, follow along with me the way that you would otherwise. Naturally, questions will have to wait, but I would like you to join me on this. Anyway, let's go over a couple things. Of course, the video playlist, I don't have much to say about that. I do want to talk to you about homework real quickly. There were 4 so far, one of them being due tonight. And these are just a little reminder what they're about. But if you owe me any of these, you should try to get them to me right now. I am going to be shutting this door in about 2 weeks. That's the plan, meaning that I will not accept late work. Beyond that point, surely not of really early work. So these will not be accepted in the future. You should get busy with them while you have the chance, if you haven't done them. All the grades for work I've received are now updated on Blackboard. You can go there anytime you want and see if you forgot anything and see how well you're doing. In general, I want to remind you that if you'd like an appointment to go over some of the skills and, it'd be good to have an extra hand, I'm going to ask you to take advantage of Tiffany Kales, who you've all gotten to know a little bit, kind and informed. I would send her an email right away and say, look, I want to see you, either on Wednesday or Sunday. And she'll write back to you. She's friendly and very helpful, very clear person. Don't forget the homeworks cannot pass, really, without a passing average. So missing one homework introduces a 0 into your average. So let's avoid it. If you've been delayed for technical reasons, you could always remind me of that, right? But in the meantime, you should get busy with these. All right, I don't go back and forth. Sorry about that. All right. This hasn't been updated yet because I'm making the video now, so let's ignore that. I want to go over some basic classic tweening very quickly because I'd like to show you where I'd like to get to today. It's called the brick, the seesaw, and the bouncing ball. And I want to give you a peek at what it looks like. This is the basics of the premise here. Now, right now it's got very rudimentary timing of bricks coming from the distance. Kind of lobs in the air and lands on one side of this seesaw. At first, the left side of the seesaw is in the air, but then the brick hits it, boom, and it goes down on the ground. Once it hits it, there's a number of simultaneous actions. The brick itself bounces, then lands and slides off the seesaw. The wheel underneath the seesaw does some quick squash and stretch. And the ball is launched into the air on a similar arc, I should say, as the brick traveled. So it comes a kind of hypnotic loop here. This is about just a few seconds. We'll take a quick look at the timeline, and these are the assets here are all going to be delivered to you. So give me a moment. Let's get a quick look at this. So there's the whole timeline. You could see it looks like it's at 69 frames. I'll take it up to 70 today, just under 3 seconds. So it's rather short. At the end, there's a small pause before the whole thing just plays again, if it's on a repeated loop. But if you see here, you'll notice there are 2 elements from the last class. This curved icon here means that you've got a guide, and that's particularly a classic motion guide. I want to interject. Pause me and take notes. Have a pen and paper. All right, this is called a classic motion guide. Now we're going to need 2 to pull this off. I do need to pause myself for a minute, at least what I was just saying, and point something out. There are 2 ways to make something move along a guide. And one of them allows you to move several objects on the same guide. That's what we did last week with the leaf falling. Yeah, we stayed with the leaf falling the entire class, in fact, but we eventually, toward the end, added copies of several versions of the leaf, which had a wonderful effect, but they were all sharing one guide. There's an easier way if an object doesn't need to share. I had to debate with myself which kind of guide to go with this week, but I thought best to repeat where we were at, because it was a bit of a challenge. All right, so here you see the guide for the brick. I just made it invisible. This is what your audience is going to see. It's rotating in the air. Here's the brick layer, and you can see a bunch of keyframes now. So it goes from hitting it to bouncing in the air to falling back down. Then it makes a small little bounce again. Little one, it's a brick after all. And then it starts its slide down with one last little boop right off the end. It kind of collapses off the end. All right. Anyway, this is the plan. I think I want to pause myself. I'm going to see if I can do that. I'm back. Took a little break there. Okay, we need today's assets. Now here's where it gets a little weird. Hopefully you've got the web page in front of you. You can get today's assets, that's Class 7 assets, directly from our home page or from the website. I myself, I'm going to simulate that, even though this is not really online yet. So you could get it from the usual class handout. Just click it. If you are in Chrome, you'll see that little animated arrow. By now everyone should know how to get to the assets. So I'm not in the habit of working on that opened folder here. So I'm going to drag mine to the desktop. A little reminder to Windows people, if yours is still a zip, could you please extract it? Right-click it and choose Extract. And then use the extracted folder, which should look like a regular folder. If you're on a Mac, double-click that zip if necessary. Now, I'm going to move it to the desktop because that's the way I like to do it. And I'm going to go to the desktop right now. And okay, so what we want is the ball and brick practice.fla. So just double-click that. That should open up in Animate automatically. Right now, just remember where you left it. Is it still in downloads? Is it on the desktop? And now we want to get busy. Now, the first thing you want to do is make sure you can see all of the graphic assets, all of the drawings. So I'm going to draw your attention to this area over here. It says 100%, and at full size, you can't really see it because of all the tools in the program. So we're going to use Show Frame a lot. So you're going to click this large arrow here and go to Show Frame. Now still, I'm often not happy with it because I do need to see my layers. And once I see them all, we'll have to renegotiate the size of the stage. So first, I'd like to draw your attention now to the layers, or I should say next. And I'd like you to find this edge, so you could press it and drag it up yourself until you see these same layers. So we've got hills and back down here on the bottom, and a bunch of others all the way up to brick, which seems to be the top one. And it is. So make sure you can see all of that. So now, looking at the stage, you could tell some of it's hidden again. And so I'm going to ask you to use these two little arrows, the one on the bottom. You could press on it just a bit. You could hold it down till you get what you want. My neighbors are really loud. I don't know if you can hear them shrieking over there. You might think it's scary, but it's not necessarily. Okay, so what I've asked you to do is show yourself the layers, right, by moving this bar, by finding the right magnification layer so you could, level, I should say, so you could see a little bit off each side. You know what the ground is, you know what the ceiling is. Notice off the right side of the stage is a brick, so that's going to be pretty important. Right now we want to start putting some objects in the library. You might want to take a look in the top right corner and see if you're looking at the Properties palette or the Library. They're usually next to each other like a team. If you've lost the Library somehow, you should go to the Window menu. Now today, I'm not going to repeat myself as much because you could pause me and you could rewind me. I'm not going to repeat myself so much because you could pause me and you could rewind me. Anyway, make sure that you are seeing the library, and now we want to go take the elements on stage and make them each into a special kind of library item. We like the term symbols, right? When you're doing classic tweening and several of the other techniques available in Adobe Animate, you have to set up your artwork so that they're graphic symbols. And we want to classic tween most of these objects, surely all these three and this one, these four different objects. So let's go to the brick layer and click on that first keyframe and notice that the brick over here highlighted. Now it's a little bit hard to see, but if you click this, it's one way of selecting this. That'll work for most purposes. So then you Command plus a bunch of times, and we're ready to convert to symbol. Can you give me a moment? You know, I am recording, but one could pass by. It's a friendly class. All right. Any case. So if you click the keyframe, you actually selected the brick. Command plus will zoom in on whatever's selected, or Control plus on Windows. So it just brought me right to the brick, and I could see it's got these little dots on it to prove that it's selected. All right, Control click on it or right click on it and convert to symbol. Now I'm really hoping you guys remember that anytime we classic tween, this was sort of the first step after drawing. Find the important objects, make them into symbols, and we've been only using graphic symbols so far. Click OK, and it shows up in the library. Well, I want to zoom back now to see the rest of the stage. So I'm going to come back up here and again choose Show Frame. If you want a shortcut, Command 2 is the one I usually use for Show Frame. That really means Show Stage, Command 2. I don't have Windows at home, but I imagine it would be Control 2. So show me the stage. And I often have to kind of top it off with this little arrow to just back up a bit more. All right, you've done the brick. Let's click on the ball. Now you could click it here, or you could click it here. But inevitably, you're going to want to zoom in on it and then convert to symbol. Now remember, when you right-click to convert to symbol or Control-click, right, make sure you don't miss the artwork. You don't click the wrong thing. Okay, convert to symbol, and I'm going to call this one ball. And you'll see it show up in the library. Now I've got two things. Well, the other objects I need are nearby, so I'm just going to hand click them. Click the seesaw and convert to symbol. Right click or Control click and call it seesaw. So I'm being very methodical on getting all my artwork done. Do you notice this little business here, though, where because of the angle of the seesaw, this blue box is sort of overlapping the wheel? It makes it feel like I could click anywhere in there and get the seesaw, but luckily not. So it should be safe to click out and then make sure you're getting just the wheel. Oh, except for the wheel's 3 parts. That's a problem. Do you guys see that? I could hold down Shift to get all 3. Or I could come back here like the way we started. Everything in the keyframe for wheel. Selected. I guess my main point was, you already did the seesaw. Now I have to get the wheel, but I don't want to accidentally turn only part of it into a symbol. So I think it's probably safer to click here. Then, well, the little dots are all over it. Convert to symbol. Call it wheel. That one's more complicated than the other ones. The other ones were just, one color each. So you notice I have the hills layer blocked and another layer of hills behind them. Locked. These here. So I could actually move those around if I wanted to. But I don't really. So let's just ignore those. Okay, here's what you want to see. If you click the brick, there's a blue box around it because you made it a symbol. Same for the wheel. Same for the seesaw. Same for the wheel. All right, symbols are ready. You know what? I would like to suggest a certain length of time for this project, and we could bend the rules. But I'm going to take us up to 3 seconds even here, and that's 72 frames. Remember how F5 is the trick you always use when you want to extend time? So I want you to go to every layer in F5. Later on, we could add more time if it isn't enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers. So far, we're going to have 2 more by the time we're done. But they're all at the 3 second mark, which is 72 frames in. Remember, in 24 frames, you hit a second. But after another, 48 frames, 72, you got your 3 second mark. Let's bring the playhead back to the beginning. All right, I think we better save as we go along here. And I'm going to take a brief pause to make sure the recording's going well, but I'll be back almost instantly for you. And I'm back. Okay. Right, we're ready to make things move. You should have your 3 second timeline. You should have all 4 of our actors turned into symbols, parent in the library, graphic symbols. And now we want to take care of the brick. So the brick is going to come on a curve from the distance, but heading into the air way away and approaching us. And as it comes down from its arc, it's going to hit the seesaw and slam into it, set the whole machinery in motion. So we want to get it to move on that curved path. There's 2 reasonable ways to do it, but one we already began, the classical method, which is classic motion guides. So in the interest of review, we're going to do it now, but we're going to also learn a little bit about a better tool for classic motion guides. But the first question is, how do I even create it, the guide? Well, go to your brick layer, right, and notice the keyframe that represents this little piece of artwork on the right. And to add a classic motion guide, we're going to make use of this little area on the layer itself. I don't want to click on these tiny layer tools or on the name really, so I'm going to click in this gap. And you either control click, Mac style, or right click, Windows style, and say add classic motion guide. Now that's a kind of layer. So suddenly the brick layer is indented, and above it is this guide layer with a curved symbol. And if that symbol is not curved, then you got the wrong kind of guide, right? Please click the trash can to delete it and try the process again. It's classic motion guide. Now we're going to draw the guide itself, which is a curve and behaving like a track for the brick to follow. Thing is, I want it in this keyframe. I want to make sure I don't get it here, which is a common error. The guide must naturally be on the guide layer. So I'm clicking that keyframe, and now I want to draw my curve. Last time we tried the pencil tool and there was lots of problems. It was okay, and it would probably be okay for something like this. But if you'd like to use the pencil tool, you can. Otherwise, join me by trying out the pen tool. Now here's the pen tool. And if it's not on your toolbar, please click these 3 little dots. The pen tool would show up here, and you'd press and drag it over. If you press and drag the wrong tool over, you could always press and drag it back. This is the one you want. When you're done, click the 3 dots again to put those spare tools away. Now listen, if you don't respond to the pen tool, you please use the pencil tool. Sorry, I have to check something fast. They don't realize that I'm in class. I feel like a time traveler. All right. Okay, so I'm clicking on that keyframe to make sure I draw on the right layer. Also the right moment in time. I want that curve to exist right away in frame 1. So here's how you use the pen tool. Click the pen tool on the toolbar. Note the stroke color. That's the only color we're going to use right now, right? And you come right over to the brick. Now here's the thing, don't click. Press and drag. This line that you're dragging is not going to be part of the path. It's an instruction. It's telling the curve, well, head about this way and be really big or really small. So I want a big curve. Now you'll notice that big curve is creating at least half of the arc I'm about to make. When I press and drag here, I'm going to complete the curve. So both halves give me an opportunity to work. Watch this. So I'm coming right over where the brick's going to hit, and I don't click and release. That would be a big error. I press and pull. So this is controlling the second half of the curve. And I might want to tilt it a little bit back since it's coming from the distance. And I want it to be pretty severe. Now that's close, but it's not exactly what I want, so I'm going to let go. The pen tool thinks I want to continue, but I don't. So I have to click any other tool to get out of there. But the tool that I really want next is the white arrow. If you do any pen tool, or you move forward in learning about the pen tool, you're going to have to learn about the white arrow. And it hides often underneath the black arrow. So I'll press it, and there it is. It's called the sub-selection tool. Again, though, if you don't have it at all, click the three arrows and find it and drag it out. The white arrow is important. So once you have it, click those three dots again, put the extra tools away. How does it work? The white arrow lets you select anchor points of an object. And when you do that, the handles show up. Now, these handles were made by the pen tool, but the white arrow lets you adjust them. So you can click either anchor point for this to happen. And if you don't see the anchors, just click the end of the line. Some programs will let you click in the middle. This program is a little different. So I'll click an end, and I could adjust the handles to get the curve I want. So just a little bit of pen tool. Again, if that wasn't suitable for you, right, you could skip over this part on the YouTube video, right? Just go back to where we clicked this keyframe and use the pencil tool instead. All right, in any event, let's get out of there. If you're still in the white arrow, just click off. Now the brick is not moving yet. We just made a track for it to follow. Now this guide is done. So I think I'd rather lock it. I'm coming right under the padlock and clicking here to lock it. This way I won't accidentally move it later. The guide is ready, so I locked it. Now let's go down to the brick itself. Now, I'm zooming in a bit. We're ready to classic tween. So I want to remind you of a couple basic ideas. You always make the artwork into symbols first, but we did that to all the artwork, except for the background. So this brick is ready to classic tween. It's already a graphic symbol. Okay, to turn on classic tweening, you pick a keyframe first, and you say classic tween from here. So I'm going to the brick's first and only keyframe, and I'm going to control click to say create classic tween. On Windows, right click and choose create classic tween. And you get this purple bar with a lot of dashes. It's saying, okay, I'm ready to go, but I don't know where. Let's move the playhead over. Now I'm going to say that that brick is going to follow along like this. 1 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi. So I don't know, less than a second. I'm going to go to 20 frames. Now the way a classic tween works, if you bring the playhead to the right moment in time, you could simply click the object and move it, and it makes a keyframe for you. I could have copied it and dragged it, but in this case, because I had the classic tween turned on, I just had to say by this moment, I dragged it, and the keyframe was made. I'm going to Command Z that just to make the point one more time. Here's the beginning of time, and I'm guessing, oh, a little under a second, the brick should reach here. So I just bring the playhead to that moment and then relocate the brick. Now, with some luck, both ends snapped to the guide. So if I start from the beginning and play it, this is what I get. Not bad. I'm going to save my file and move forward. I'm also going to pause to make sure that my recording is working. Okay. So we've got the brick traveling and hitting the seesaw, but I think all that distance would have changed its rotation a bit. So I'll click the keyframe because it's an easy way to select the object. And then I do Command plus to zoom in. So I click that keyframe, it's selected, and it knows when I Command plus or Control plus to zoom right in there. I want to rotate that object, so I'm getting the free transform tool. I want to remind you that anywhere there's a keyframe for this object, I could rotate it, or scale it, or use other properties. But right now what's going to happen is, on its way down, it's going to switch from its original angle. You could see it up in the air starting to turn, and then it comes back down and hits it from the bottom. Well, what would happen now? It would have to bounce. So, I'm going to give it just a little ways. I think I'm going to zoom out a bit more. Remember, by choosing the moment in time, this would create the next keyframe, which is true except for it just snapped to my guide. I better Command Z. All right. So if you still have a keyframe in that spot, Command Z again. All right, here's the problem. The guide exists for the entire life of this movie, when I really only need it until here. Once the brick hits the seesaw, I don't need the guide anymore. So I want to make it disappear from this moment on. So I'm going to click inside of that guide layer, right at the moment of impact. So I'm going to right above this keyframe that represents the brick, right here. And I'm going to I'm going to insert, a blank keyframe. So click in frame 20 or above your brick's impact. And you can tell the guide to disappear as of now. So you control click or right click and choose insert blank keyframe. So you can see from the guide layer that the earlier part is a darker gray, representing the life of that object. The right side is this pale gray, meaning this is all unused. So now I can go back and think about my brick. I'm done with the guide. The brick's free to bounce. So again, I'm just going a few frames over, and I'm going to bring this in the air. And I think I'm going to rotate it too. As it got propelled, it spun. Bang. Nice. If I want that to hover a bit, I have to create a pause. Now, do things actually hover between their momentum ruling and gravity ruling? It feels that way. So cartoonists have always made use of that, and animators. So I'm going to use something we used in last class. I'm going to option drag this keyframe a couple frames over, just to create a pause in the air. Don't go too far or it'll feel weird. So now the object hits, bounces. Here's the keyframe of its apex. I option drag that to here. It just hovers in the air. Now here's the thing. I'm not prepared to drop it yet, because I don't know how far it has to go. The seesaw would have hit the ground over here. Just think that through. The brick comes, hits the seesaw, and at this point, wouldn't the seesaw slam to the ground? So that basically means while the brick's going up, this seesaw's got to be going down. Let's simplify this. Find your keyframe where the brick hits the seesaw, and go to the seesaw layer. We want a copy of the seesaw right here, and we want to classic tween it going forward. I could start the classic tween back in frame 1. That wouldn't harm anything, so I think I'm going to do that. But I want to tell you, this is going to be a long pause right up to here. So let's go to the keyframe and turn on our classic tween. Just do it that way. And we know that as the brick comes down, boom, it hits in frame 20. And this is where the seesaw is going to have to react. So let's copy the last keyframe. Now we've been option dragging it to make copies, and that would work, but it's kind of far away. What would happen if I F6'd here? When you F6 in a tween, it looks at what's on stage, on the seesaw layer this, and it simply turns it into a keyframe. So if the object hasn't moved, F6 would essentially be a copy. You know what? I feel like that's complicated. I'm going to option drag it. Why did I do that? Because this is where the seesaw gets hit. And so now it could start to rotate from here. So I'm going to go a couple frames over and make yet another copy, but that one I'm going to change. So I'm going to option drag it again. Essentially, I option drag the original seesaw to frame 20. This is where the action starts. I option dragged it a few frames over, and now look what I do. I make sure I have the transform tool because it rotates. This is all classic tweening. So the brick comes down, hits in frame 20. At this point, it goes in the air, but look what the seesaw does. The ball looks left out. We'll get there. But now we know how long the brick has to travel on the way down. But let's watch this again. And what I'm going to ask you to do is save it. If you'd like to see a preview, Command Return or Control Enter. It's kind of odd, right? But it works. The brick does look like it hits the seesaw, and the seesaw does react. The brick also bounces in the air. Well, I think what's left to do is finish off the brick. It's got to fall and slide down the seesaw to the ground. So find your brick layer to stay oriented and find the last keyframe that you have. So there it is in the air after a short pause, but we're now ready to make it drop. This is how long it took to get up in the air. It's going to take a little bit longer probably to come down because it's got a further distance to travel. So I'm going to take a guess and come about here. I could copy a keyframe and move the artwork, but I just don't need to with the classic tween. When you're moving an object, it will make a keyframe for you. It's not true of if I'm just going to rotate it or scale it, but if I move it, it'll just make a keyframe for me. So I'm going to bring this straight down. Right, it's a brick, after all, it wouldn't be blowing around in the wind. And I'm going to make it hit at some kind of angle. And this is what I've got now. It comes down, boom, propels the seesaw, hovers in the air for an instant, comes back down, and hits it. Now if I want to check the timing out, I'll save it, and I can play it right here. I'm okay with it. If that's disorienting, you could always make a preview again, the Swift file we've been treating as previews with Command Return or Control Enter. There I go. This is where it hits the seesaw. And at this point, I'm tired of making it bounce. I think I'm going to have it kind of fall to the seesaw and slide. So I'm just going to go hardly over at all. And here's the problem. If I'm not going to move it, I just want to rotate it, I'd have to make a copy here myself. F6 would just look at the artwork and make a keyframe for me. So in this case, it's the same as option dragging it. It sees that there's nothing doing. It'll just turn that into a key moment. So I'm going to click right here and F6. If you'd preferred, you could have just done this and option dragged. So I'm going to rotate it to look parallel and drop it. And I just want to see how that looks. I think it's okay. I could even slide this over a bit. All right, I'm going to go a little further now, take it off the tip of the seesaw. And a little bit further to drag it a bit more and rotate it like it hit the ground. So there's the path of the brick. Up in the air it goes, coming back down, boom, slides, and lands. I'm going to save it and get a look at it in Flash Player. I'm pretty happy with that. You know, arguably, if it bounced that high, there would have been a second bounce. Maybe half as high. But right now, I'm going for a little bit of shorthand. Okay, you know, I definitely do want to work on the ball, but there's something that bugs me and I'd like to fix it. That wheel is impossibly steady for what's going on around it. I think the wheel itself could use some squash and stretch. So let's take a look and see what that would take. Going back to frame 1. We'd gone back to frame 1 where the wheel was. And remember, the wheel's already in the library. We made it a symbol early, right away, so we wouldn't forget. And I could turn on the classic tween anytime I want to. So since I've been doing that a lot today, I'm just turning on the classic tweens from frame 1. And I'm only doing that in the interest of consistency. There are other ways to see it. Now here's where the brick hit again. So that's again, frame 20 was the moment of impact. It's also the moment that made the seesaw itself rotate. So that'd probably be the same moment where the wheel would start to squash. So remember, there's a start and an end. We don't want it to start way at the beginning of time. It starts the squash once it's hit. So over here, I need to copy that keyframe again. So F6, when in a classic tween, takes what it sees of the object, which is just the wheel, and turns it into a keyframe. So I'm actually going to F6 it here. You know, one of the things that can feel a little mysterious is when do you need to option drag a keyframe and when do you need to F6? Sometimes they both work. Anyway, in this case, the artwork was just what we needed, the way it looked. We just needed a keyframe because we have to copy it again to create a little span for the squash. So here's where the squash starts. I'm going to go over just a tad. Maybe 2 frames. And I'm going to copy it again. So remember, in this case, it looks at this and it'll turn into a keyframe. I could F6, but in this particular case, it's the same as option dragging it. Now you remember, this is going to be squash and stretch, and then it has to come back to its original size. So let's copy it again. So if I lost you, let me back up. We turned on the tween for the wheel. We went to frame 20 where the impact was and created a copy of our keyframe. I need 2 more copies because the one in the middle is the one that's going to squash. I'm keeping them about 2 frames apart. And now I'm going to the middle one. Again, it's going to be about the transform tool. Now here's the thing, when you squash it, because we didn't move the axis point earlier, it lifts off the ground. Let it be, don't move the axis point now, it's too late. They would all have to share the same location, so don't move that little circle. So if you just squashed, make sure to stretch in the other direction so it feels like it still has some mass. So it's going to come from this keyframe to this one, which I just squashed. I stretched it a bit too much. And then it's going to go back to its original. So now the brick hits, boing. The only problem is, this one's in the air. I'm not sure I mind it. It feels a bit like a bounce. But if it does bother you, just pull it down. Here's that with the skin. That was just for me to see if it was on the ground. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to save it again and preview it. I'm pretty happy with the behavior of the seesaw and the brick. So all that's really left is the ball. One of the things that I find most interesting about all this is just developing your own sense of when you should work on which element. I mean, of course, sometimes you just want to work on the earliest event first and go through the sequence, but you notice I left that brick in the air. You know, I had reasons why. I didn't know how far it needed to fall until the seesaw hit the ground. All right, let's go back and deal with the ball. So, I'm going to show the frame again. Remember, that really means show stage. And I'm seeing all my layers. And now I want to find the moment where all that action is done. In other words, the brick is hit the ground, all the squashing and stretching's over, right? Actually, no, that's not the moment I care about, now that I think about it. The moment I care about is impact. Because wouldn't, from this moment on, the ball have to be launched in the air? So frame 20 seems to be the ruler of the action in terms of responses between objects. The brick started early, but everything else seems to start at frame 20. Okay, so I'm going to go to the ball layer, and I know that the ball's already a symbol, already a graphic symbol, so I'm just going to turn the classic tweening from the timeline. I know now that the ball isn't going to do anything until the brick hits the seesaw. So I'm going to give the ball a new keyframe there. So the thing is, from here forward, that ball is going to have to be launched in an arc. Just like the brick came on an arc, the ball's going to go back on an arc. So I think what I need to do is to make a motion guide. Now I know I've got this kind of sleepy tween so far of the ball in frame 1, and it travels all the way to frame 20, the playhead does, but the ball doesn't go anywhere. So we're going to have to make sure the guide starts in frame 20. Okay, let's start at the beginning. The ball wants a guide, so let's make it. Come right next to the word ball. We want to get this little menu here, right? Remember, I don't want to click the padlock or any of these things, so I like this little gap. We want to add another classic motion guide. So it's interesting, there's two sets. This one's just for the ball. The thing is, I don't want to put the guide back here, right? The ball shouldn't be moving along the guide yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to make a keyframe here to tell the guide, start now on Magic 20. Anytime you want to draw an object anywhere but frame 1, you have to make your own keyframe. So I'm going to do Control click or right click and choose Insert Blank Keyframe. Making sure that it's highlighted, I'm ready to draw the guide. I'm hoping the pen tool went well for you before. If it did, try it again. If it didn't, you could use the pencil tool. It's an easy enough shape, but it has to be smooth. All right, I'm going to do it with the pen tool again, which is now waiting on the toolbar. Should be. Did it disappear somehow? It did. So I'm going to grab the pen tool and bring it back out. And I'm going to click the 3 dots. Here's the pen tool. All right, it's got a stroke color of black, that's fine. I'm on a keyframe that's starting at the very moment that I'm going to want the ball to move. Press and I drag up. Say I want a big curve and not this way, not straight up, I want it this way. And then I'm going to come off stage and I'm going to pull it. Yeah, I'm having a bit of trouble because my zoom isn't in my favor, but I'm going to let go. Because remember, it's the wide arrow that helps you most with this kind of thing. And I want to leave the pen tool anyway so it doesn't think I'm drawing more curve. So I'm just going to way to the toolbar, find my wide arrow. Remember, with the wide arrow, I could click the edge of any object that hasn't been put in the library, any object on stage at the very least, to get these handles. So if you don't like something about it, well, you can move the anchors. Maybe you wanted to stop here in roll-off state. I'm going to have mine go off state. And you can grab the handles to control the curve. This is the right side of the curve. This is the left side. I'm done with the guide, so I'm going to lock it. Now, the ball's still not going to move, because if you look at the ball layer, there's only one keyframe. And, oops, sorry. There's two. I got a little lost for a minute. Remember, the ball was here back in frame 1. And all the way here is just a long pause. It's from here we want it to move. How long should it take? Well, it looks like the brick took 20 frames to arrive. Maybe the ball will take 20 frames to leave. So I'm going to go out to about frame 40 on the ball layer and simply drag that ball to the other side. All right. Now to see if that really worked out, I'm going to save it and preview it. I'm pretty happy. All right. Save what I'm doing. And I want to say a couple quick things about this, and I might squeeze in a little bit more. This is kind of complex, and it was an open challenge. It is the 7th week, and I wanted to stretch out the way objects affect each other, right? We've had a lot of like solitary motion. This is secondary and then some. A whole ecosystem of motions. And if you found it a challenge, are you up to it? You could always do it again. You now have a copy of the file, and even if this one's already used up, you could open the zip again, unless you've deleted it, and then you could, even then, you could get a fresh zip from the website. Give me 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. It's just these are after hours for me. It's unusual that that I'm working now. Not an interesting story, or I would share it. Okay. Okay. So make sure it's saved. And I just want to say a couple quick extras. Boy, wouldn't it like sound? And maybe I would like to hide the guides now, even inside of Adobe Animate. Let's do the guides first. This eye column would hide everything, so I don't often click it. But I could hide the guides for both the ball and the brick. And this way, I don't have to keep leaving just to get the feel for it. All right, here's a plus. For anyone who's had enough, there's no homework this week, but I would suggest that you practice by redoing this file. It's probably a good idea to keep a copy of the zip somewhere, or just to go download a fresh copy now and try it again. The video will stay online, and you'll have a lot of support to try this elaborate thing. I would also like to add that you could take it your own way. What else should go on? And what should the brick bounce more? Should the ball fly to a hill and then roll down? You know, what else should happen? Okay, I'm going to stop this for now, though, and I want to mention a little plus. What about sound? Well, the first step is to acquire those sounds. Oops, I'm in the wrong program. There we go. The first step is to acquire those sounds, and I already prepared some in today's Assets folder. Once you know you have the sounds on your computer, you import them to the library. So here's the library, and Animate's file menu has import to library. So go right to the file menu for that. Import to library. You find today's folder, and in it you'll notice is another folder called Sounds. I want to try this one called Descend Impact. So I'm going to click Open, which brings it into the library. File menu, import, import to library. Then it's here. And if you click it, you'll see it even has a little preview button at the top right. That part that sounds like a bell I want on frame 20. So let's see what's possible. I want to get a look at the sound. And I think what I'm going to have to do is just put it on the timeline. All right, so we're going to make a new layer just for sounds. But please be sure it doesn't show up between a guide and its partner. So whenever you click a layer, if you click the New Layer button, the brand new layer shows up above the one that's currently highlighted. So I'm going to click up the top and ask for a new layer now, and it'll be the topmost. Then I'm going to double click it, call it sound. All right, this is just a taste, a little addition today, a little extra. If you're really exhausted, you could skip this part for now. We're going to see how far we could, whether we could take sound further during class. Now, so here is the keyframe from the sound layer. And I'm going to drag my sound right out there, even though I'm probably going to need to. So you click the keyframe, then go to the library and drag the sound out and drop it on stage. So you can see it begins at that keyframe. Now I just want to hear it. So it looks like the bell sound is way over here, frame 40. Now what the problem is the brick lands on frame 20. So what I'm wondering is if the end of it, the impact sound, is frame 40. I need these last 20 frames. So I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click in the sound and try to edit it so that I could keep the second 20 frames and delete the rest. So you click in the sound and go to your properties palette. Properties always represents whatever it is you're clicking on. But if you click in a sound, you see the whole sound zone, this whole sound part of the properties palette. And all we need is this button, the edit sound button. So click in the sound first, properties palette, and click this button, edit sound. Well, I wanted from frame 20 to frame 40. This here will let me cut off the beginning. Except for all of that's moving with me, so that's a little hard to figure out. What I'll do is, the end should be easy. That's where the clang is. I'm going to try it. Let's see. It looks, I'm going to get a visual then. This is 20 frames deep. I'm going to use this as a way of telling. And I'm just going to drag this right over to that part of the waveform. So that leaves me with 5, 10, 15, 20 frames. That's about right. Thing is, I want it to fade in and fade out. So what I'm going to do is show you the fade out first. Clip up against this line to create an anchor, and it does it for the left and the right speaker. I click a little further in to create another anchor. The reason being, I want the volume to stay normal up to here, but then drop. So I'm going to take the outside anchors that I made and drop them. So I just made 2 pairs of anchors and drop the outside. The beginning doesn't look like it's going to fade in very well. It's going to start in the middle of a sound, but there's already an anchor there for me. So I'm only going to put the other one near it and then drag this one to the floor. I'm going to preview it. Close, but no cigar. I need a little bit more of this. That's not so bad. Thing is, it's now too long. I need it to be about 5 frames less. If you drag one too many, you could pluck it off. Boing. So I want to point out something. Whoops. I keep forgetting that it moves the numbers with me, which is a little confusing. I'm going to get a visual on this. Well, actually, I want this to come to here, so I don't need much. Oh, it's moving all these pointers. Well, not sure that I need to fuss with this. Am I going too far? I don't know. Let's try it. It looks like the clang is way out here, but it does slide down the seesaw. Maybe I'll just get lucky. I like it. I just think I should probably include more of it for the slide. Boom. Maybe all of this deserves some sound. Will it feel weird while it's in the air? I'm going to make it longer. I click inside of it, click the edit button, and I'm finding the end. It's just this light area. Remember, I cut off the outsides with these. So I'm going to make it last a little bit longer. And I'm going to have to make sure that the volume's working. Whoops. Oh, this won't let me get it. This is proving difficult. This one doesn't want to move. There we go. I want a smooth ramp. There really isn't much more for the slide as it turns out. So, would I need more sound? I like it. And if you need more sound, you could explore what's left. Now, here's what I would recommend. I'm going to call this one whistle. It might be easiest to manage if you want to work with more sounds by making a new layer. I'll name it after I acquaint myself with the sound. Remember, I had to bring them into the library before I could use it. Well, I have two more sounds for you. So, first thing you could do is bring it in. File menu, import to library. I'm going to get bounce and falling whistle. I think I'm just going to use bounce. Here's bounce. Maybe when it lands the second time, boom, I hear that pop sound. This one. All right. Well, I made a layer for that sound, but I'm going to need a keyframe if I want to put it there. Insert, blank. Anywhere I do that, I can drag a new sound out. I like it. Does the ball want a sound? Here's where the ball gets launched. Ball. And here's its guide. Maybe I could use, let's see. Did I use this one already? No. I think I'm going to use that. So this is the ball. I think I'll put a layer right above it. I made this one already. So, oh no, this one here was the bounce sound. All right, the ball doesn't have one. I think I'll put it over the guide just so it doesn't get confusing. And I'll call it ball sound. The trick is, when does the sound start? Once the ball launches into the air. So, if I don't put a blank keyframe here and I drag a sound out, it's going to go way back here. So just like, oh, I need a new drawing, I better make a blank keyframe. Or, I want a new sound, I better make a blank keyframe. And I'm going to drag a falling whistle and drop it on the stage. I like it so much that I don't want the sound cut off at the end. So I think what I'm going to do is let me turn off my looping. It's a little good. How many more frames do I need for that sound? I'm going to click in it and just do some research. I'm going to make like I'm going to edit it. I just want to see how many frames it is. Looks like about 110. I'm going to extend my timeline. F5, all the way down. I gotta say, so this one, as I said, is an extra, and that's why I'm not really making it my complete goal to have you copy what I'm doing. I do want you to kind of explore what the ideas are. I'm doing some editing in the animation program, which is an option that we have. Of course, in many cases, you'll finish the work and just deliver it to the sound people, and they'll make the soundtrack themselves. But here's a viable method, especially when working alone. So I'm going to save it. Here it is in Flash Player. I kind of feel like the ball sound needs to come later. I don't know why. So I'm going to grab that keyframe, click it once, press and just drag it over. Not that far. I just want that ball to be in the air already. I'm going to let it be, save it. Here's the final product. And I'm pretty happy with it. I'd want to do a little bit more with the sound, particularly with the sound for the ball, but it's definitely off the ground. I just want to say a last thing before I close up and just mention a word or two about next week. To output this, you can't give anyone the FLA, right? So what format is suitable? Well, GIF is not anymore because this has sound, and GIFs don't offer sound. We're going to have to make a video. I'm going to do it quickly. You know what? Give me 1 second first. I want to test to make sure everything's working on the video. All right. I'm double checking that it's saved, and I'm going to File menu Export, where I'm going to choose Export Video. This can be finicky, even though it's very important. Sometimes you might choose to make a QuickTime movie if requested, and we'll find QuickTime here on this list. There we go, QuickTime. But other times you want an MP4. So QuickTime makes .mov. What makes .mp4? And that would be this one. So make sure that you choose H.264. That's how a video gets compressed into the kind of format that we like best, which is the MP4. So this is the compression scheme that produces an MP4. Double check you're in the right folder. Click here. Make sure you're not saving into the wrong place. I am turning off Ignore Stage Color because I've actually used this, which is a stage color. So I don't want that ignored. So it's the original size, it's the entire movie. This is the important detail to make an MP4, and this is the folder. I'm going to click Export. Notice this is turned on, Start Adobe Media Encoder. If it doesn't work, I would go turn on Media Encoder myself, come back to Animate, and just follow these steps. It seems to me a little finicky. This starts another program that's part of the Creative Cloud suite. So it may take a little bit of fuss. Well, let's find out. So that should have made an MP4. Sure enough, it says .mp4 has been successfully created. I'm going to say OK, and then have a look in the folder. I did some tests earlier, so there's other things, a big mess in here. But here's my MP4. All right. Not bad. I'm kind of curious how big that file is in terms of file size. There we go. It's about 400 kilobytes, very small. I'm pleased with it. All right, folks, I better sign off now. To say, sound can be complicated, can be simple. Export should be simple, but sometimes fights back. That was fairly smooth, that last round. Any case, again, sorry I could be there this Friday. I will see you next Friday. Please check the handout to see about prior homeworks. Check that you've done them all. Also, Blackboard has been entirely updated with your grades. This is late for me, guys, and so I better go. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you paused me when you needed to. Hope you managed to join me as much as possible, and I will be seeing you next Friday. Over and out. Bye.